Thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm going to try sitting. If that doesn't work out, I'm going to probably stand up. Thanks for everybody for coming. My comrades, True North artist Clay Ross, True North artist Marissa White, True North artist Laurie Beckball. Thanks for coming. I've been working towards this for, I don't know, it's been a couple of years, I imagine. A couple of years ago, I did a house show in town with a very generous friend who has a really amazing home in the Old North End in Petty Jewett neighborhood, actually. And she opened this mid-century home to me and offered me this show. And I'd been working on these pieces that were sort of born from COVID, and that's what these are. And these are, I call them PAIROSCOPES. I guess a little bit of history is that, in addition to what Abby has mentioned, I've lived here about 23 years, and with my wife for 22, and officially for 15 years as of a few days ago, when our anniversary was. But I spent about 12 years in Alaska before that, and I grew up in Detroit, so I've had a lot of diverse sort of experiences. And I count myself as an experientialist. I like all these different experiences. I have siblings that have told me many times, if you sell your climbing gear and your guitars and you sell your unicycle and you sell this and you sell that, you could really focus on what it is that you do best, which is this. And I sort of feel like I do this best because of all of that other stuff. And so that's sort of where some of this stuff was born. I used to draw a lot when I was a kid, and I was an illustrator, a technical illustrator, right out of high school. And I got this fascination with super realism, and my skills and my hand couldn't keep up with the way I wanted to arrange things in a space. I'm arranging all of you people in portraits and collections as I sit here, and it's very distracting. But it's something that I have to do. I have to collect things in a shape and fill a space in a way. And so an old scoutmaster turned me on to photography, and I had an older brother who's one of my dearest friends who also was a photographer. So I was like, oh, that's a double sign. I have to do these things. And so I started photographing, and it was just sort of a quick sketch. Those of you who know photography know Henri Cartier-Bresson, who's one of my favorites, and you might even see that in the other room, a little bit of that influence. But he said it's just a quick sketch. He didn't care about photography. He didn't care about the art form. He cared about collecting his thoughts as a sketch in an instant way. This work that's in the back room is how many of you have seen some of it? Have you guys been back there to check it out? It's an ongoing sort of constant diary thing for me, and there are many different chapters, or if I can use the analogy, how many of us have different moleskin notebooks and sketchbooks, and this is about this, and this is about this, and this is about this. That's what that type of work is for me. It's a journal for me. It's a way that I collect experiences. I think some artists create images. Many of them are in this room. And some artists collect images or things. And I'm definitely more of a collector. And I think we all collect a little bit. Some people collect stamps. Some people collect vintage guitars. Some people collect little rusty bits. Some people collect friends. Some people collect enemies. I'm a collector. And these are all things that I've just seen and wanted to remember seeing and experiencing. I don't know that it dives much more deeply into any sort of pathos or psychosis, but it definitely, it does my heart good to know that I can go back to them. This is the best way I can say it. It's not more mystical than that, if I could really speak about it, I would be a writer, and it would be a lot cheaper, for sure. But this is what I do, and this is what I've always done. I sold climbing equipment and backpacking, backcountry skiing equipment for 30 years, and it was sort of my identity to most people. Most of them didn't know I did this sort of on the sly, as sort of an underground thing. And now it's time for me to share this stuff. And this stuff specifically was, like I said, born out of COVID, and we all had different experiences. A lot of my artist friends had, dare I say, somewhat wonderful experiences because they were used to the seclusion. They were used to that they felt comfortable not being able to go anywhere because they hole up in themselves. Some people really struggled. I found myself going out to walk the good dirt and just observe things that I think a lot of people walk over. And I was looking for some symmetry and some order and some awareness of what surrounds us. And this is what I sort of came up with to create those things. If they're born from chaos, they're also born from indecision. And as I was creating some of these diptychs, I struggled with which way was the best way for them. They're all intended to be turned, and I hope you guys play with them a little bit because these are supposed to be touched, like Abby's doing right now. And the whole idea is that ability to collaborate, to come to an art gallery and step over the velvet rope and be part of the creative process. It sounds very noble. What it really is me not being able to decide on what the best way is to display it really is. And they all speak in different ways. These on the shelves here, some translate very well in all different directions. Some do just best. This one in particular happened to be sitting next to it. Just does best sitting like it is to me. So what this process sort of created for me was an opportunity to present to my community a collaborative possibility, something where you guys could come in and and play with the art, and I find great solace in being able to see things different ways and not having to decide on the way that it is right. And I thought I would find solace in watching the community play with them in the way that they felt was right. But I probably was wrong because there were some nights on the opening reception where I saw some people like mixing images and creating this asymmetry, and to me I was just like scratching, and not really because I opened it up to everybody, and it was a huge lesson to me. They're not like a song. I play in a band so that I can play my wife's great songs, and a song everybody interprets sort of differently. We're learning a Metallica song right now, and there's the Metallica version, and there's a Phoebe Bridgers version, and there's a Miley Cyrus version, and everybody interprets it a little differently. And so this exercise in PAIROSCOPES has been intriguing to see people want to take and build that chaos and build that asymmetry. And it was an exercise for me to be able to just step back and observe how people see it. And it's been fun to collaborate with those of you who've played with them. And and I hope it continues. I see having Periscope parties where we just, open a bottle of wine and turn some pictures around. Viva l'America. As I said, I don't think I have any profound statement on these things other than I really wanted to include you all as part of it. And you don't get to see that very often. I think I was moved by the Fine Arts Center. Used to have a section at the long end, and maybe they still do someplace, where it was sculpture mostly for blind people. And you could go and and I remember going there with our kids when they were little and just having them close their eyes and just touch the cold things and the smooth things and the rough things and the ability to just interact with it. You know, as humans, I think we require touch. And I think what a good metaphor for sharing art is if we can all touch the same sort of things and have our own experience with it. It's a chaotic place in my brain, and I do these always. I've always collected the shapes of things, and I do a lot of work in a square. I really like the order of a square. And I think I wanted to explore working in color, although I'm also working on a whole series of these things that are all black and white because I can't run away from it. Sort of how I see things is in a monochromatic sort of way. They're sort of violently different processes. Any English teachers out there? Very different ways to do things. And I think I invited that because the street stuff, it can be very emotional and observational, and there's stories in every single one of them. And I guess this is as close as I get to the kind of work that you do, or maybe Heather does, where you are creating, or Carol, our dear friend Carol, they're creating these images and these scenarios and things, and I just don't do that. So maybe I'm creating a collaboration.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you call the place between symmetry and asymmetry? That little sliver of where you live. What do you call it?
Boy, that's a good question.
Or what's the color? I mean, whatever. You know, tell me about
What
it.
the color at the moment? The color is orange.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why, but it is. And I think of photography this way, especially the type that's in the other room, because this could be a lot of these. Really, none of them have. Well, two have movement in them, proper movement. And this wave piece, that's in Puerto Escondido in southern Mexico. And then this is from our local Pride Parade. But movement isn't really a big part of these pieces. And in the other room, there's a lot of movement, or there's a lot of, people talk about the decisive moment. And I tend to think about photography in that realm as sort of the sliver between those two moments. Because it's not really a single moment, you know.
No, but if you hang out in there, you're like, symmetry. No, symmetry. Symmetry. So this is very therapeutic for you.
Absolutely,
I mean,
that.
This whole process.
Yeah, it's imperative.
It's like aversion therapy when people touch your stuff. You're like, oh, please. No.
I'd be
Yeah.
I would definitely. Thank you.
Did you have that out?
And thank you, Matt, for not naming the show Touch My Stuff.
Yeah. Now I'm having regret, Heather. Now I'm experiencing regret. But it's an experience, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful. I'm going to think about that. What's your name? Yeah, I think if it weren't for this sort of therapeutic thing, I mean, I know many artists in this room, and I bet every single one of them would say that if they didn't have this, they'd probably be divorced messes and struggling. Maybe not. Maybe they already are. But I'm thankful to have it. I'm thankful that I have the great support of my wife, and my whole family is super supportive of me. To finally maybe be seeing some sustainability with what I do, because I'm actually putting it out there and sharing it with people. And that's a big, huge thing. Because I don't do it I really don't do it for you guys. This happened to be it happened to look good that way, but I could continue to go on for the rest of my life and do it for myself and not really care to show it to anybody, or I say that to myself, to show it to anybody to get red dots on it or to have that success. To show it to other people, to share it is a huge part of it. And that's important, super important to me. So I want you guys to touch these. I don't know that you'll have an opportunity, but it's really important. Can't touch these because of the way that they're hung. If anybody ever, people who own these, like this person, he'll be able to be in his home and change them to however he wants them on a whim. Or you guys might come over to his house for a dinner party and you could say, hey, Wendy, how do you feel about being in between those two places? And allows you to do so. Yeah, well, try to shake that for the night.
I'm already in therapy. I'm good. I'm good. I'm so good.
So, my wife had a statement.
How did you know it was a statement and not a question?
Because you don't have to answer.
Well, one thing I will say, I guess there's one thing, but this is satisfying to me because like I've been walking around in places in the world for 22 years, and we always look at stuff. I don't really think I know like how you're seeing it, or like something else is going on in your brain, and we're like taking in nature, or taking in like where like the people standing in a parking lot, like I'm doing lollipop, or but I will say that I think that one of the things that intrigued me a lot about the show that was different for me than the way I've been seeing New York, and like brought another element for me is just what symmetry does and how much it changes things. Like this piece over here with the seaweed, I know I was there when you took that picture, and like the kids were probably little or teenagers or something, like and it was just like a random piece of seaweed and some like different types of seaweed, and like it astounds me that when you made a periscope out of it, that it became like an orchid, like it looks like an orchid, and like it did something for me to like realize that it could do that, or like that line would create a triangle there. I never would have seen it that way, and it definitely changed something for me. But symmetry brings some sort of life to things, and then this one, I know where you took that. I never paid any mind to that particular thing, or like it did not draw my attention. But when you put it that way, it reminds me of like some of the symmetry in the architect symbology that we've seen, especially like in Mila, where this like painstaking effort has been taken to create this like meaningful symmetry that I didn't see until we put it up that way. So like you showing the symmetry kind of like brings another layer with the periscopes, like layers in something in its mirror image, and then also like maybe a little bit more of what's going on in life that we're kind of missing. Or that I am, and maybe you're not.
Well, it's interesting that you speak of the Zapotec sort of symbology and tradition, because this was done in a really, really super public market in the center of Oaxaca, Mexico. And it was done about 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. And this has got a little bit of a backstory. I don't tend to name things unless a gallerist asks me to name something so they can post it on a website and maybe sell it. But this has a name of Jesse. Jesse was my nephew, and he died unexpectedly at 28. They found him dead in his apartment in Manhattan. And he was a budding photographer that apparently was afraid to talk to me about photography. Like he was intimidated. And I found out later, and it really bothered me. So my sister gifted me his camera after I tried to coax her into using it herself, and it was just sort of too much for her. And she got it to me like 2 days before I left for Oaxaca, and I went to Oaxaca, and with the sole purpose of finding this sort of centerpiece for this show, sort of to honor my nephew, Jesse. And it was shot with his gear. So that's what this is about. So it means something totally different to me than it does to anybody else. And that's what's exciting to me. The sort of lightning bolts and this, he was a dichotomy in life, as he is sort of in past life. The stuff in the other room, I'm going to pass a print around because there are certain things in my world that I consider consumables. And in the old days, in the 20s and 30s, and who knows when else, artists would get together at artists' homes and they would pass prints around. And now it's like, oh, you can't touch that, or they pass an iPhone around or something like that. So they have these little foam things. That's how the things in the back room are hanging, because I like to get away from the glass and the frames. And it's really expensive to do that, but I really like this being engaged with what's in the image. And this is one of the pictures that you can just pass it. Don't worry about it. Don't lick it. But this is one of the images that really speaks to the sort of journalistic aspect of it, because I grew up a Polish Catholic kid in Detroit, and cemeteries were the only place where you were quieter than you were in a public library. And it was reverence, and it was seriousness, and it was sort of frightening and boring. And I resented it having to be that way, I think, secretly. So I just avoided all those situations. I avoided going to funerals, the ritual just didn't speak to me. But I honor my parents, and it really speaks to them, and I will always respect them in that way. But when I went to Oaxaca for the first time, it was during Dia de Muertos. So all of these pictures were taken in a 2 or 3 day period that are in this back room, maybe with a couple exceptions. But I noticed that these people celebrate their ancestors. They celebrate death, and they celebrate the opportunity to converge in these graveyards all day long and through the middle of the night, and party and play music and dance and laugh and conjure their relatives and learn from what they can learn from them, or at least experience them. And we didn't do that here. It was too sad. And these people aren't sad. Some of them are. But this was probably before 10 a.m. when I did these cemetery walks. And I had 3 shots of mezcal before probably 10 a.m. because when you're photographing them, you're trying to be covert. I'm not the kind of person that you see on YouTube that says, I think you're interesting looking and I want to photograph you as a street portrait. It's just not how I do it. I'm a lot more covert and maybe disrespectful, but there's always respect. There's always dignity, I think, or I hope. And I've been challenged by that recently. But I was invited into that world. And there were people cheersing me and giving me mezcal and inviting me to sing with them and stuff. And here I am documenting this thing that they love so much. And that's what that's all about. It's a whole different world. I mean, it is culturally, but it's a different stratosphere as far as the mentality that I grew up with. Just to see, there's a picture in here of a young boy wearing a skeleton suit, and he's kneeling on what I imagine is his grandmother's grave, maybe. And he's just like, you'll see it if you go through there. He's just like holding it up like it's a shroud of Turin or something like that. But it's not there. He's just imagining it. And his mom her back is turned to the camera, and she's wearing a skeleton suit, sort of in support. And it's just a nice image of a family, and what a nice thing to experience these days, in such a crazy sort of place we live. They're all just observations. They're just things I saw, and it's a journal, and it's my little home movie, but I do it in a little bit more extreme, sort of selective way. There's another image in here of a young man with a half skull face, half a skelly face, as we would say in our family, and he's got his hands up like this. And my friend Luis had paid him the equivalent of $5 or something to do a freestyle rhyme, like a beatbox hip hop rhyme for him in Spanish. And Luis speaks very good Spanish, and I speak very none. And Luis turned to me and had this sour face, and I was like, "What is that about?" Like almost immediately, and he said, "I just paid him $5, and he rapped the whole time about you." And he's looking right at the camera, and you can see, and he said, and Luis jokingly, he was like, "Yeah, you owe me $5. And he said, "Yeah, oh, and you look like an artist from Paris, and with your John Lennon glasses." And that's it. Apparently right when I caught him doing this, and that's the story behind that picture. And there's a story for every single one of them. I could wax on for hours, probably, embarrassingly, but that's definitely one of those stories that sticks. We saw him that evening. That was right before the Dia de Muertos parade, which is a huge parade that goes down the main walking street, and it was so packed with thousands and thousands of people that me, as a 6'2" person, I felt like I could lift my legs up off the ground and I wouldn't fall. Like a concert, front 10 rows of a 70s rock concert or something, sort of thing. And it was such a powerful moment because everybody was just moving together. And in another situation, it might have been frightful, but this wasn't that frightful. And after that ceremony, I think it was that night, we ran into that same man who was just walking around making a few bucks, you know, he was basically busking. And Sarah gave him another $5. And he did a rap about us. I have no idea what he said, but Sarah was entertained. And we had a really nice second experience. I was so glad Sarah got to see him. But there's stories for all of them. I'd be happy to speak to any of you on any of them if you'd like to share, but I appreciate the opportunity to talk. Before this kind of thing happens, I don't dread it, but it's not something I wake up and say, "Oh, I hope I get to talk to people about what I made," because I'd rather not, because I usually say something wrong or I say something that wasn't authentic. Or no, I don't say anything inauthentic. I say things that I wish I would have worded differently. But you got what you got. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.